prioritizing American hostages should be the top of the list, top priority for the Biden administration. But out of touch and absent-minded commander-in-chief has provided zero answers on that. Let's bring in our foreign policy panel, Newsmax foreign policy analyst Waleed Fairs and distinguished professor at Touro University, Thane Rosenbaum. Welcome, guys. Thanks for joining me. Good to have you here. Waleed, let me start with you. Here are the images of the hostages released today. Israel is releasing 39 Palestinian prisoners. Is this a good move by them? It's ultimately the release of terrorists. They're accused of crimes such as stabbings, recruiting, transferring money for terror groups, planning suicide bombing attacks. I know there are women and teenagers, but what are your thoughts on this trade?
It's a very difficult situation because Israel now was brought, because of October 7, to this position. You know, even if you commit in general not to release terrorists, at one point, if you have a plan, a larger strategic plan to defeat Hamas, then you may accept exceptionally to do that exchange of hostages further versus terrorists. But the problem is that the ally of Israel, that's the United States, that the Biden administration is not putting enough pressure on Hamas via putting pressure on Iran. I mean, we are sending, this administration is sending billions and billions of dollars against what? If Iran doesn't pressure Hamas to release all the hostages, Americans, Israelis, and others, why are we sending all that money? It goes up to that level at the end of the day.
Thane, I mentioned earlier, Biden gave his remarks this afternoon. What are your takeaways from what the president said, or I should say, what he clearly struggled to say today?
Bill, I agree with you. I mean, I think that he had an expectation for the Americans to say, we're going to get at least one of our people back. What do you mean nobody came back? Hamas has sent a very strong message. We could care less about the Americans, and half of the people that are being returned aren't even Jews. So the message that they're sending to the Israelis are, we're not doing anything to placate you. We're not doing anything to placate America. We'll start doing it in very small numbers, and we're not doing it in a way that will please you. And by the way, Bill, for the people that are cheering for Hamas on university campuses or on the Golden Gate Bridge or the Brooklyn Bridge, remember, the Hamas did not even release one American. So you're an American cheering on behalf of Hamas, and when it was time to release some of the hostages, not one American was released.
Do you think that's ignorance? Do you think it's purposeful?
Among the protesters?
Yeah, among the protesters.
Look, you know, look, it's so hard to understand the whole idea of it, right? I mean, you know, this is sort of normalizing anti-Semitism and genocidal anti-Semitism without any shame. You know, no one's using the words two-state solution or borders or the capital of Jerusalem. No one is talking about that. They're talking about, you know, no Jews. And so it's hard to believe that it's pure ignorance. I think some of it is deliberate, that it is normalized. And remember what an agonizing decision this is, Bill, for Israelis, because they know that the people that they're releasing, they're not going to go to graduate school. They're not going to invent a cure for cancer. They're not going to be concert violinists. They're going to look for the next suicide vest to put on. They're terrorists. They're in it full time. And so years ago, when 1,000 Hamas fighters were returned for one Israeli soldier, Gilad Shalit, the Israelis know that some of those people that they returned were probably the ones in southern Gaza on October 7th.
Yeah, no doubt. Waleed, Biden is contradictory at best in his leadership here. Well, you can't even call it leadership. There is absolutely zero focused and cohesive and consistent foreign policy. Now, the president stated he wanted to help the situation between the Saudis and the Israelis. Then he's sending tons of monetary aid to Iran. Billions of dollars we're talking about. What's your take on, let's just talk about this from a perspective of the mixed messaging and the lack of any consistent foreign policy.
He just did one when he made those remarks. He said, on the one hand, Israel, we understand if it wants to end Hamas, if it can end Hamas on the one hand. And on the other hand, he says, but you have to slow down. How can Israel slow down and then end Hamas? So it's clearly contradictory. The problem is that our foreign policy, not just throughout these 3 years of the Biden administration, but since the 2014-2015 Iran deal signed by the Obama administration, it's a very long process whereby the Iranians have been exerting influence on our foreign policy. So now look and count with me. We are not taking action against Hezbollah. We're not responding against the Iranian militias who are attacking and killing U.S. soldiers. Not just Israel, but U.S. soldiers in Syria and Iraq. And when it comes to Israel regarding Hamas, we tell them, slow down. How can you slow down? How can they slow down if they want us to end Hamas?
Waleed, just to follow up on that, I mean, you've seen now Iran and Qatar, other nations coming in to negotiate this release. Where is American leadership? How is that not front and center?
See, they don't even admit what is real. What is real is that the Iran regime and Qatar are coordinating. It's not from yesterday or since October 7th. They've been coordinating for the last 15 years. One takes care of the Muslim Brotherhood, that's Qatar, and then Iran takes care of Hezbollah and Hamas, and they are coordinating against us. One is softer because we have a base there, and that's Qatar, and Iran is doing what Iran does, which is to take money from us, fund the militias, create more bases for the ICBMs, and I have no idea what's the rationale of the Biden administration keep funding the Iran regime, which is the cause of all the problems we have in the Middle East.
Outrageous. Thane, back to you. I want to just go back to the protest conversation. Pro-Hamas protesters hijacked the Macy's Thanksgiving Day parade yesterday. You know, this is why we can't have nice things. I mean, how outrageous. What are your thoughts on that as we wrap this up?
You know, Bill, we're seeing this everywhere. It's not just on campus. It's now off campus, as you pointed out. And this is a real problem, in part because I think we're not appreciating that this is not even about Hamas anymore. This is anti-American. And we have to be really more honest about this. These are people that are not, the very same people that are calling Israel a colonial state are the same people that cheered on the violence in Black Lives Matter and believe that America is a racist state and don't believe in American exceptionalism. So there is a kind of corrosive rot that we're seeing within the country of people that are really speaking out, not so much against Israel. They're talking about the West. They're talking about Western civilization. They've had enough of it. They don't want it. And the question is, why are we tolerating their behavior if they're so opposed to this country and the values that built this country?
That's right. Well said. Waleed Phares, Thane Rosenbaum, thank you, gentlemen. Appreciate you. Happy Thanksgiving. Enjoy the upcoming weekend.
You too, Bill.
Same to you. Thank you.